hacer cuando te vayas? ¿Cómo disimular? Que me vuelvo loco si no te tengo.
Yeah, that's about enough of that. Reggaeton, the real cause of Havana syndrome. Also, as we're about to see, Yoan Moncada's music debut, Personal Desastre, is somewhat fitting. El Duque, Yasiel Puig, and Jose Abreu's harrowing paths out of Cuba, dealing with shark-infested waters and sharks looking to exploit future millionaires are incredible. But Yoan Moncada's legal route out of Cuba might be the most fascinating of all. Did he promise a large percentage of future earnings to an accountant claiming to be his agent? Did he fall into a honey trap, marrying and impregnating an American who scouted him for his baseball skill, but also to win his heart? Get inside the dugout and learn about the incredible tale of Yoan Moncada from Cienfuegos to Chicago.
One of the names that we heard a lot of noise about in the offseason was Yoan Moncada. You see the numbers right there. He's only 19 years old. He's a switch-hitting infielder from Cuba.
So there's been some great journalism and documentation of this convoluted case. However, interest in the story seemed to drop off with strong speculation, solid conjecture, but still more questions than answers. This video is relying on the investigative journalism of Jorge Arangor Jr., Jesse Sanchez, and the writing of the late Peter Bjarkman. However, two court filings, filed after much of the spotlight faded on the story, might corroborate the reporting, or at least comes the closest to many parties involved acknowledging they had roles in a shadowy agent shell game with a romantic trap thrown in.
We headed to Canada.
Anywhere else. He hits that one up the middle.
Who the fuck is
Nicole Banks? Who is Nicole Banks? But before that, who was Yoan Moncada? It's no surprise the baseball world was drooling over a 19-year-old switch-hitting uber shortstop prospect. This set off a bidding war in 2015. The Red Sox won this war with a $31.5 million signing bonus. Today, Moncada is a budding, if inconsistent, young third base star for the Chicago White Sox. He was a brilliant player in Cuba's U18 Development League before debuting for the Cienfuegos Elefantes in the Cuban National Series at just 17. He would play alongside Aribel Arrobarena, who would sign with the Dodgers, Jose Abreu, the White Sox, and he joined just after Yasiel Puig had donned the green and would soon become a sensation, if not the poster child of sexy defection stories and a face of the Cuban invasion in the majors in the 2010s.
Ropes one to right center. That is
Those players were typically a bit older, and Moncada represented something different. A product of a baseball factory, but still young enough to mold in a franchise's image. And perhaps young enough for an ambitious suitor to win his heart while presenting a legal path to the same riches many teammates and friends had to traverse literal and figurative dangerous waters to achieve. Cuba long dominated international competition, but also took part in unique tournaments in Holland.
There are only two things I can't stand in this world. People who are intolerant of other people's cultures, and the Dutch.
Unique for its intimacy and accessibility to players. Agents were always assumed lurking, but very careful not to blow their cover. Doting female fans were rare, as the low-profile event, although chock full of talent, was typically played by loyal Cuban players without MLB aspirations or anywhere near MLB resources. The appearance of Nicole Banks stood out to those watching closely during the 2013 Rotterdam tournament. Brit Cuban baseball fan Gavin Owen frequently accompanied the teams during such tournaments, and first pointed out Banks' presence to historian Peter Bjarkman. Journalist Jorge Arangor Jr. would explore the Banks-Moncada relationship in a December 2014 article for Vice. Even executives who have spent years in the international player market are marveling at the mystery and innuendo surrounding 19-year-old Cuban phenom shortstop Yoan Moncada. His legal exit from Cuba, his subsequent romantic pairing with a player agent, and his representation by an accountant who has never had an athlete client in any capacity. nobody has seen a Cuban defection story quite like this. It is known that she had knowledge of Guatemala as a springboard for Cubans off the island. Yoan Moncada got his first real taste of playing in the majors in 2017. After signing that large deal with the Red Sox, he became the key piece in the Chris Sale trade between the Red Sox and the White Sox. The spring of 2017 also saw a court filing in Los Angeles that at least acknowledges that Banks and Hastings had direct involvement in bringing Moncada to the States. Nicole Banks versus Josefa Gonzalez Hastings et al. Lists Banks as the ex-wife of Moncada. On April 17, 2017, the court stated the plaintiff Banks had no expectation or entitlement to monies related to Mr. Moncada's professional baseball contract. She could also not pursue lawsuit against the Hastings for a percentage of their earnings in acting as Moncada's agent. Banks also cannot assert she performed professional services or worked regarding Moncada's path to the majors. Quote, the plaintiff's prior sworn statements are fatally inconsistent with plaintiff's claims in her current lawsuit. The summary goes on to confirm. Banks is the ex-wife of Moncada. They met in 2013 on the international baseball circuit. The marriage and relationship lasted less than 2 years. In divorce filings, Banks attested the relationship was purely romantic, and she had no business in recruiting Moncada to play baseball in the States. Via divorce law, she would be entitled to $16,000 per month in support payments and a $130,000 lump sum payment. She seems to have been happy with that settlement for about a month, as 1 month after that agreement, she filed for 10% of Moncada's earnings via the Hastings. Banks flip-flopped from having no business association to having a verbal agreement with Hastings for 10% of any signing bonus and future earnings. Undisputed facts indicate Hastings invested in international baseball players seeking to immigrate to the U.S. and MLB. In 2013, Banks and Hastings formed Baseball Divas, in which Banks would act as agent and Hastings financier. Banks, while in Rotterdam, Holland, to scout a different player, was approached by Moncada, and the two began a romantic relationship. They would have a son and marry in November 2013. September 2014, Moncada entered into an agreement with Hastings for agency representation. The numbers are reported at 5% of earnings versus the 30% that Hastings would later argue they're entitled to. So, Banks can't pursue further litigation, but the Hastings have against Moncada. On October 6, 2020, Josefa Gonzalez filed a debt collection lawsuit in Clearwater, Florida against Moncada. Articles surrounding this litigation allege that Hastings represented Moncada, as has been acknowledged in the previous court filings. Josefa Gonzalez contends Moncada paid the agent $6 million to date, but failed to pay the percentage from 2016 to 2020, little yet sums associated with a 6-year extension that Moncada signed with the Chicago White Sox in 2020. Gonzalez's suit claims that on June 25, 2014 in Ecuador, Moncada signed to give 30% of his bonus and 20% of future salaries to Hastings. The witness? Banks, referenced as his wife at that point. Which Banks account is to be believed? It does appear the two met in Holland, and even court documents indicate Moncada first approached the 12 years as senior Banks and started flirting. Was he aware that she was likely an agent, and at the very least put herself into a target-rich environment, acknowledging she had arrived to court a Cuban baseball player? Was this path easier than paying human smugglers or jumping in a leaky speedboat? Their relationship quickly blossomed, and Moncada invoked a lesser-known loophole in retiring from the National Series before being granted a rare travel visa ostensibly sponsored by his foreign wife. How many Cubans would know the ins and outs of this system this well? Looking at social media, Moncada and Banks appear to have a respectful relationship to this day. If Instagram is indicative of anything, they do appear to be civil in both playing a role in the raising of their son. The case with the Hastings is ongoing. Hastings recently recruited another Cienfuegos second baseman in signing Cesar Prieto as a client. Ultimately, it appears Moncada owes a percentage to his former agent, and by proxy, ex-wife. However, maybe the biggest learning curve for a first-time agent was improper documentation. Verbal agreements over $31.5 million might be equivalent to...
That's as good as money, sir. Those are IOUs. Go ahead and add it up. Every cent's accounted for.